Hi guys, what's up? My name is David and welcome back to my channel. So, if you didn't know, I study Scandinavia studies, and a lot of people are interested in Scandinavia because of one thing, the Vikings. And, I'm not going to pretend that I am not one of those people. I mean, if you've been watching my channel, you know that I have a big interest for Vikings. But does it go too far sometimes? Does this interest make other Scandinavian things less attractive or less known? Well, if you're interested in this and my opinion on it as someone who studies Scandinavian studies, then feel free to keep watching. And if you like this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and let me know down in the comments what you liked about it, if you have anything to add, and stuff like that. So before we start, what is Scandinavia? Scandinavia is a concept that different people interpret in different ways. So first of all, we have the Scandinavian peninsula, which is Norway and Sweden, and technically also a bit of Finland. But because Finland is not linguistically related to the other Scandinavian countries, it is usually not counted as Scandinavia, but rather as Nordic. And then we also have Denmark, which is not on the Scandinavian peninsula, but because it is linguistically and culturally linked to Sweden and Norway, it is also counted. And then we have Iceland and the Faroe Islands, which are not on the Scandinavian peninsula either, but because they have been colonies of other Scandinavian countries and also are linguistically linked, Faroese and Icelandic are also Scandinavian languages. So therefore, we can also count them to Scandinavia. And there are a lot of fun facts about this geographical and cultural region. But one thing stands out, the Viking Age. And these countries know that. And they also know that a lot of people come to their countries because they're interested in the Viking Age, for whatever reason that is. For example, people find out that they have some kind of Scandinavian heritage, and they like to say that they have Viking heritage, which is obviously not necessarily true because the Vikings were only a very small part of the Scandinavian population in a time period that lasted like 200 years. So, no, your ancestors probably were not Vikings, they were more likely farmers, which is also fine, you know? Not everything that is cool or Scandinavian has to be Viking, which is kind of the point I'm trying to make in this video. So, a lot of people realize they have Viking heritage, at least that's what they think they have, and that's what sites like MyHeritage or Genome Link or stuff like that market themselves as. I have seen DNA tests that say, find out if you have Viking heritage, which is obviously a marketing plot to get more people to take their DNA tests on their site and to see if they have Scandinavian heritage. But they market it as Viking because they know people find Vikings cool and interesting and they want to have Viking heritage. But online marketing is a whole nother thing. I want to focus on what is happening in the Scandinavian countries in particular. Now, I have only been to Norway, Denmark, and Sweden. I have not visited the Faroe Islands or Iceland yet. I mean, I've also been to Finland, but again, that is not really a Scandinavian country. But these countries, Sweden, Norway, and Denmark, also do a lot of Viking themed advertisements to get people to their countries. And let's be honest, it works. It really does. I got an ad on Instagram a few years ago about a Viking themed festival in Norway called Midgardsblod. And I checked it out. I saw that a lot of bands that I liked were coming there and also lecturers from the Viking Age studies. So I went there and I really liked it and I went again. And this year I'm going yet again. So this Viking marketing really works for people who are interested in that stuff. And even if they aren't, places in Scandinavia have been converted to Viking related places. I will stay by this example of this festival because I have actually read a whole article about how the existence of a place and event like this kind of shadows other stuff that might be going on and might be interesting in this place. I will put a link to this article below if I manage to find it. So this festival takes place in Borre in Norway, and Borre is mostly known for Viking stuff. There's a whole art style called the Borre style, named after the finds there. There is a huge national park called Borre National Park, and there's the Borrehaugene, which are grave mounds that also have a very controversial history because the Nazi Party of Norway used to meet there, but that's a whole other story. Anyways, nowadays, that's where this Midgardsblot festival happens. And as this article I mentioned before says, there is a lot of other stuff in this place, in Borre, but because the Viking part is so popular, that's why people come there. And for example, the residents may not be as interested in this whole Viking stuff as the tourists are. And again, I know that I am part of the problem because I go there for Viking related stuff. I totally see how like it's weird and I'm part of this. But again, these countries have a very long history, and the Viking Age only lasted in the early medieval period. So everything before and everything after is kind of like hidden by the fact that at some point in this 200, 300 year history, something was there, which again is not necessarily wrong, but it is interesting that this particular part of Scandinavian history is seen as the most important and has to be above everything else. So, for example, as this article mentioned that I talked about, there is a harbor in Borre, which is a harbor that is in use right now. But recently, another find has been discovered there that there actually used to be a Viking Age harbor. And there are plans now to demolish the existing harbor and move it somewhere else so that this historical Viking Age harbor can be a tourist attraction, which means that the lives of the people that live there, and a lot of people there use this harbor because it's Norway, and things like fishing are very important there, not only for the economy, but also because people just like to do that stuff. And they would have to sacrifice something of their own lives to accommodate potential tourists that only come there for Viking related stuff. So there is this ethical problem, like, is this the right thing to do? And there already is a Viking Age museum in Borre, and this national park with the Borrehaugene. So is it not enough? One might say that no, because this is clearly an important historical site, then surely it would be beneficial for the economy of this small town to get as many tourists as possible. But the thing is, not every town wants this many tourists. I think the most famous example is this one town in Switzerland, I forgot its name, that basically put up a barrier for tourists that they cannot take pictures and selfies anymore because they're so done with this influx of foreigners that only come there to take pictures of their views and don't really do anything else. So I do understand it if local governments are like kind of against all these people coming in. But on the other hand, I do think that it is nice to be known for something cool, like the Viking Age, for example. And this festival here in Borre is organized by locals too. So it's not that all people hate that this is going on. It's just that there is an ethical question of, is this really the right thing to do? And if we just go back to other examples, there's a lot of Viking Age museums all around Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Iceland too. And these museums sometimes also attract people that later, don't have time anymore to visit other stuff as well, which is kind of sad for the places that they're in. I mean, it's great that they attract people there, and for me as a student of Scandinavian studies, it's great that people are interested in Scandinavia, so am I. But there are other non-Viking related things in Scandinavia that are nice, like the nature. But then again, this nature is also very over popularized, I guess, and also has to do with the rising nationalist tendencies in the 19th and 20th century, which also have to do with the rise in interest in the Viking Age. Like, this is all closely related, and the origins are again highly controversial. And then there's another thing that I want to mention, which also has to do with this festival. Again, I keep using this because I have been there personally, so I can speak about this better from my personal opinion. But it is pagan pilgrimage. Now, I used to joke that me going to this festival was some kind of pilgrimage because I go there every year and it is catered towards Norse pagans or people with interest in Norse paganism from like a non-spiritual level. Like there's also lectures from Viking Age scholars, which to me is probably one of the most interesting parts of this festival. But yeah, kind of also is a pilgrimage because people come there for religious or spiritual reasons. And it's weird because sometimes people come there from lands far beyond even the close proximity. Like people come there from America, again, as I said, after they discover they have some kind of Scandinavian heritage. I've spoken to quite a few Americans there who said that they discovered they have Scandinavian ancestry and they wanted to visit the lands that their ancestors came from, which again is great. I love that for them. It's just that sometimes people are being fed a idealized and not always right view of what these homelands are and who their ancestors were. Like, please, if you are from the United States and you're watching this, please don't think your ancestors were Vikings because they most likely were not. The Viking Age is called the Viking Age because of this tiny percentage of people from a land that already was not very highly populated. So the chance of your ancestors being Vikings is very small. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. You can always fantasize and dream about that. And people have done that for centuries, not only in America, but also in the Scandinavian countries. But, you know, there's a different reason as to why so many Scandinavians ended up in the United States, and it is poverty. They were not rich at all. And honestly, that was also kind of one of the causes of the Viking Age in general. There was a need for foreign goods and foreign riches in Scandinavia because for whatever reason they were not able to provide it themselves. For example, there was no silver being mined in Scandinavia, so every single silver artifact found there is important. So, of course, Viking Age Scandinavians also traded, and it's not that the only source of riches were Vikings plundering stuff and taking it back home. A lot of goods just also come from trading and taxes and, exchange of goods. So again, there's this idealized view of what the Vikings were and how the Viking Age looked like, which is not necessarily correct. Of course, we will never know exactly what was happening in that time period because most sources we have come from outsiders who always had their own political agenda as to what exactly they were describing. Obviously, people attacked by Vikings would have a very negative view of them and may exaggerate their negative qualities. And for example, Christian missionaries would also have kind of negative views towards these pagans. So nowadays, we also see these sources from these outsiders and let them form our view of the Viking Age Scandinavia and also Scandinavia today. Because the modern countries, the nation states of Scandinavia, have also been heavily influenced by this Viking past. For example, the interest in the Vikings in Sweden was caused by the loss of Finland to Russia. And this was the end of the Swedish Stormaktstiden, which means the time of the great power, where Sweden was a pretty big country with a lot of influence. And when they lost that influence and those areas, they had to look back at this supposedly glorious past that was the Viking Age. And that's where all this romanticizing started. And again, I'm not saying it's all bad, and I think it's a pretty human thing to just look back at the past, like back in the old day where everything was better, you know, and if that helps us as humans to just be more content with our lives today, then keep doing that. I will continue to visit Scandinavia for Viking related reasons. I am in no way saying that you should not be doing that, but I would suggest reading into what it is you're actually going to do there if you're planning to visit and think about your own reasoning for doing that. Like, why do I feel the need to travel there? Is it for spiritual reason? Is it because I think my ancestors came from there? And if they did, why do I want to visit this region? And as I've said, I know that I am very much a part of this. I only have a very tiny amount of Scandinavian ancestry. I am mostly Slavic. I'm from Poland. And it does sometimes feel weird to be this invested in a culture that is not yours. And I'm actually planning to make more videos about my own pre Christian culture, which is, Slavic paganism. But because the Viking Age is so popularized in popular culture, in travel guides, in history books, it is just so easily accessible to whoever is interested in any sort of early medieval, pagan, pre Christian religion. So that's why people from other countries also tend to be interested in the Viking Age, because it's so easily available and because it is so popular. But again, there's nothing wrong with liking this, and there's nothing wrong with visiting Scandinavia for these Viking related places. I have been to a lot of Viking related places in Scandinavia. For example, I've been to Gamla Uppsala in Sweden. I've been to a lot of museums that have Viking related collections, like Historiska Museet and the Viking Museum in Stockholm, and the National Museum of Denmark in Copenhagen, and the museum in Borre in Norway, the Midgard Viking Center. And yeah, still waiting for the Vikingship Museum in Oslo to be opened, but that will be in 2027. So still 3 years to go. Anyways, that was the video for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I've made my stance clear on what I think about, Viking fueled tourism to Scandinavia. If you have ever been to these countries for this reason, let me know down below. If you ever want to visit, also let me know down below. If you have anything to add or anything to ask, of course, feel free to reach out to me in the comments. Just be nice, don't be hateful. I'm not here trying to tell people what they should and shouldn't do, and I'm not asking for that in the comments as well. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoy it and would like to see more content like this, make sure to subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.